The colony of Taraxis was not a world of glory or wealth. It was a quiet place, settled on the edge of the galaxy. Its people were farmers, miners, and builders. They were not warriors. Their cities were made of stone and steel, spread across the wide green valleys of the planet. They had never thought much about war, for war was something that happened far away, in the deep space where great empires clashed. But one night, the sky of Taraxis burned. The stars themselves seemed to vanish, covered by the black shapes of the Vorath swarm. The Vorath were no empire. They were a plague, endless living ships driven only by hunger. They stripped planets bare, leaving nothing alive, and now their shadow fell on Taraxis. The first alarms echoed across the colony cities. Sirens screamed through the streets and families rushed into shelters. The planetary defense forces, small ships, old weapons, and a few thousand brave pilots, rose to meet the swarm. But everyone knew the truth. Taraxis could not stand alone. In the central city of Caravel, the Council of Taraxis gathered in a tall tower. The room shook as explosions echoed from orbit. Outside the window, the night sky glowed with fire. The council leader, a woman named Raylan Voss, slammed her hands on the table. "Send the call again," she cried. Her voice was sharp with fear. "Send it to every star. Someone must hear us." The technicians worked frantically at their consoles. Messages were already streaming out into the void, flashing from relay to relay. A simple plea carried on every frequency. "This is Taraxis. We are under attack by the Vorath. We need aid. Anyone who hears this, please help us." The council sat in silence after the words were spoken. They all knew the truth. They had already sent the call an hour ago, and another an hour before that. No answer had come. The trade hegemony, their closest ally, had already refused them once. Months ago, when Taraxis had begged for stronger defenses, the hegemony had laughed. "Why waste ships on a small colony?" they had said. "You are not important enough. The Crystal Dominion was too far." The Vathari fleet was busy fighting a border war. Every great power had its own interests. Taraxis was alone. In the tower, silence stretched. The only sound was the low hum of the transmitters still calling for help into the cold void. Finally, one of the counselors, an old man with tired eyes, spoke. "No one will come," he whispered. His words fell like stones into the room. "We are forgotten." On the surface, families huddled in fear. The Vorath's first wave struck the orbital defenses. Taraxis had only a handful of warships, old and weak. The Defiant, the largest of them, was barely larger than a freighter. Captain Yaren, commander of the fleet, stood on its bridge with grim resolve. "All ships hold formation," he ordered. His crew obeyed, though many had tears in their eyes. They were not soldiers. They were farmers' sons and miners' daughters who had been trained to fly. Through the viewport, Yaren saw the swarm descend. Hundreds of black shapes, their carapaces gleaming with sickly green light. The Vorath moved like predators, fast and merciless. "Target the lead swarm ship," Yaren said. "Fire everything we have." The Defiant's cannons lit the void, beams of plasma streaking across the blackness. The smaller Taraxis ships followed, their shots like sparks against a storm. For a moment, one Vorath vessel staggered under the barrage. But then the swarm surged forward. The battle was short. The Vorath tore through the Taraxis fleet like blades through cloth. Ships burned, hulls cracked, and men and women screamed over the comms. The Defiant fought to the last, its weapons roaring until its core went critical. Captain Yaren stood on his bridge as fire consumed his ship. On the surface, the people of Taraxis watched as their fleet became falling stars. Back in Caravel, Raylan Voss stared at the holoscreen as the last defense ship vanished in a ball of flame. Her council sat pale and silent around her. "It is over," one said. "We cannot fight them. We cannot even slow them." Raylan clenched her fists. She was not willing to give up. "We will keep calling," she said. "Even if no one answers, we will keep calling." She turned to the technician at the console. "Send it again, louder, stronger, make the whole galaxy hear us." The technician's fingers shook as he obeyed. The message went out once more, the same desperate words carried into the void. "This is Taraxis. We are under attack by the Vorath. We need aid. Anyone who hears this, please help us." Hours passed. The Vorath began their descent. Their great living ships broke through the skies, spitting fire into the cities. Shields rose, but they were weak. Buildings crumbled. The people ran through the streets, children crying, mothers clutching them close. In one village, A boy named Talon stood with his father. They watched as the horizon glowed red. "Father," Talon whispered, "is no one coming? Won't anyone help us?" His father placed a hand on his shoulder. His voice was heavy. "No one listens to the small," he said. "The great powers care only for themselves." Talon looked up at the sky. He wished with all his heart for someone, anyone, to appear. But the heavens remained dark with the Vorath's shadow. In the council tower, Roland Voss remained at her post. She had not left the room for hours. The pleas kept going out, but the silence was unbroken. She leaned against the table, her eyes closed. "No one will come," she whispered, repeating the words of her fellow counselor. She hated them, but she felt their truth. The galaxy had abandoned them, and yet she kept the call going. For somewhere in her heart she refused to let go of hope. Far away, in the quiet black between stars, signals drifted. Messages traveled on beams of light, hopping from relay to relay. Most were ignored, but one signal reached ears it was never meant to. In a small outpost on the edge of human space, a listening station caught the Taraxis call. The operator, a young human named Eli Carter, frowned as he read the words. He had never heard of Taraxis, but the fear in the message was clear. He called his commander at once. Soon the signal was sent up the chain, passed to captains, then admirals, then the Council of Earth itself. The humans listened in silence as the desperate cry of Taraxis filled the chamber. And then, unlike the other powers of the galaxy, they answered. "Prepare the fleet," the admiral said. "We move at once." Back on Taraxis, Raylan sat at her console. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. The Vorath were closing in. She could already hear the distant thunder of their weapons on the surface. Then suddenly her console lit up. A new signal appeared. Different from the silence, different from the Vorath. Clear, sharp, and strong. Her heart stopped. She leaned forward, pressing her ear close to the speaker. "This is the United Human Fleet," a voice said. "Calm, steady, powerful. We have received your distress call. Hold on, we are coming." Raylan's breath caught. She looked at the others in the council chamber, her eyes wide. For a moment she could not speak. Then, with a trembling smile, she whispered the words she had not dared to believe. "Someone heard us." It was short, simple, and full of strength. "This is the United Human Fleet. We have received your distress call. Hold on, we are coming." For a long moment, no one in the council chamber moved. The words echoed in the air like thunder. Some thought they had misheard. Others thought it was a dream, a trick of their desperate minds. Roland Voss, leader of the council, stared at the console, her heart pounding. She forced herself to breathe. "Repeat it," she ordered the technician. The signal played again, clear and steady. The humans had answered. The chamber erupted. Counselors who had sat in despair leapt to their feet. Tears filled the eyes of old men and women. Some cried, some laughed, some simply sat in stunned silence. For the first time in many hours, hope returned to Taraxis. Far above the colony, the Vorath swarm still moved. Their dark shapes filled the heavens, their ships blotting out the stars. They descended in waves, striking at Taraxis's cities, devouring its defenses. But they had no idea that something new was coming. In deep space, beyond the rim of Taraxis's star system, the human fleet jumped out of faster-than-light travel. The sudden flash of their arrival lit the void like a storm. There were not many ships, only 15 in total, but each one carried the mark of humanity's fierce design. They were not graceful like Dominion ships, nor vast and ancient like the Vathari dreadnoughts. Human ships were sharp-edged, fast, and built for daring maneuvers. At the heart of the fleet was the flagship, the UHS Thunderchild. On its bridge stood Admiral Marcus Hale, a tall man with gray at his temples and steady eyes that had seen many battles. Around him, officers worked quickly, reading reports, adjusting weapons, and preparing for war. "Vorath swarm confirmed," one officer said. "Numbers heavy. Planetary defense is nearly gone." Admiral Hale nodded. "They expected no one to come? Let's prove them wrong." He looked out at the void where faint lights marked the burning planet ahead. His jaw tightened. "Signal the fleet. Engage battle formation Delta. We move in fast and strike hard." The human fleet surged forward. Engines roared, leaving trails of blue fire behind them. They did not advance slowly or cautiously. They attacked like lightning. The first Vorath ships they met never stood a chance. Human destroyers weaved between them, firing volleys of missiles and plasma. Explosions lit the void, scattering Vorath carapace fragments like sparks. The Vorath turned to face this new enemy. Hundreds of black insect-like ships wheeled around, rushing toward the humans. Their weapons glowed sickly green, spitting fire into the void. But the humans did not retreat. They pressed forward, striking again and again. On the Thunderchild's bridge, Admiral Hale gave orders with calm precision. Squadron 2, break right. Draw them into the open. Frigates, cut through the center. Keep them guessing. Do not give them time to swarm. The officers obeyed. Human ships darted in unpredictable paths, moving with speed and daring no other species would risk. They slipped between Vorath formations, striking at weak points, vanishing before the swarm could surround them. To the Vorath, it was chaos. To the humans, it was strategy. On the surface of Taraxis, the people looked to the skies. At first, they saw only darkness, the endless rain of Vorath fire. But then they noticed something new, bursts of light high above like stars being reborn. Children pointed, their eyes wide. Look, look! In the council chamber, Rylan Voss watched the battle unfold on the holoscreen. At first, she did not believe it. Human ships, small, fast, and bright, were carving into the swarm, breaking its endless tide. They came, she whispered. They truly came. The counselors gathered around her, staring in wonder. For the first time in history, Taraxis saw the humans fight. Back in orbit, the swarm tried to adapt. They sent larger ships forward, vast beasts with armored shells. They opened their maws, spewing acid fire across the void. But the humans answered with fury. The Thunderchild launched a spread of torpedoes, each one guided with deadly accuracy. They struck the great Vorath beast, piercing its shell. The explosion ripped through it, sending burning fragments spinning into the dark. The bridge of the Thunderchild shook with the blast wave. Officers cheered, but Hale raised his hand. Do not celebrate yet, he said. We've bloodied them. Now they will come harder. He was right. The swarm regrouped. Hundreds of smaller Vorath ships began to circle the human fleet, moving to trap them. Sir, they're closing in, shouted an officer. Admiral Hale's eyes narrowed. Then we break through. He leaned over the console, voice calm and firm. All ships, full speed. Form the spear. We punch a hole straight through their line. Keep firing. Keep moving. Do not stop, the fleet obeyed. Like a spear of fire, the human ship surged forward in a tight formation. Weapons blazed, tearing through the swarm. The Vorath tried to close in, but the humans moved too quickly, slipping past their claws. The spear drove deep into the heart of the swarm, scattering ships, breaking their unity. For the first time, the Vorath faltered. On Taraxis, the people could not believe their eyes. For hours, they had thought themselves doomed. Yet now the sky above them was filled with light. Not just the fire of destruction, but the blaze of resistance. Every strike from the human fleet lifted their spirits higher. Every Vorath ship that fell felt like a promise that Taraxis might survive. In the streets where fear had once ruled, people began to cheer. They raised their voices, crying out thanks to the skies. Children laughed through tears. Old men and women clasped hands. For the first time they believed. Back in the council chamber, one counselor turned to Rylan. Why? He asked in wonder. Why would they come? The others left us to die. Why would the humans risk themselves for us? Raylan had no answer. But she knew they would have to ask when the battle was done. In orbit, the battle raged on. Human ships began to take damage. One frigate was struck, its hull split open by Vorath fire. The crew evacuated in escape pods, but the ship was lost. Another destroyer was swarmed by small Vorath vessels, torn apart piece by piece. On the Thunderchild, alarms blared. Admiral Hale gripped the rail, his face grim. We will not break, he said. Not here. He turned to his officers. Signal Taraxis. Tell them we stand with you. The message reached the council tower. The technician read it aloud. We stand with you. Rylan closed her eyes. She could almost feel the strength in those words. They were not alone anymore. The battle stretched into the night. The Vorath sent wave after wave, but the humans answered each with fire and fury. The fleet's movements were reckless, daring, and brilliant. They struck where no one expected, turned when others would retreat, and risked maneuvers that would terrify older, slower species. To Taraxis, it looked like madness. To Admiral Hale, it was the only way to win. At last, the Vorath began to pull back. Their formations wavered. Their numbers thinned. The swarm, used to easy victories, was shaken. They had never faced prey that fought like this. And so, for the first time since they had descended on Taraxis, the Vorath retreated. The skies grew quiet. Smoke and fire still burned, but the endless tide was broken. On the surface, people wept with relief. Families embraced. The cheering of the crowds filled the streets of Caravel. In the council chamber, Raylan turned to her people. "Remember this night," she said. "Remember who came when no one else would." She looked up at the holoscreen, where the human fleet floated in orbit. "Battered but unbroken. They came like lightning," she whispered. On the bridge of the Thunderchild, Admiral Hale stood with his officers. They were tired, bloodied, but victorious for now. He knew the Vorath would return. This had only been the first strike. The real battle was still ahead, but tonight Taraxis still stood. And humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to answer a cry for help. The victory in the skies above Taraxis had been brief, but breathtaking. The Vorath swarm had retreated, leaving destruction in their wake. Cities burned, forests smoldered, and families mourned those lost in the first wave. Yet amid the smoke and fear, the people of Taraxis felt something new: hope. It had come from the humans. On the surface, children ran through the streets, pointing upward at the orbiting fleet. The human ships glowed like stars in the dark sky, their presence both strange and comforting. Adults whispered to one another, still unsure if this was reality. "They actually came," one man said. His voice shook. "They actually came when no one else would." Raylan Voss, council leader of Taraxis, stood in the central plaza of Caravel, addressing her people. She raised her hands to quiet the murmurs. "Look at the sky," she said. "This is the proof that we are not alone. The humans have come to fight with us. They risked themselves for our lives. For the first time I see courage beyond our world." The crowd erupted in cheers. People wept. Some prayed silently, while others simply stared, mouths open, at the glittering fleet above. On the human flagship UHS Thunderchild, Admiral Marcus Hale watched the recovery efforts on Taraxis through a communications feed. The humans had already begun scanning the planet for survivors, mapping safe zones and coordinating medical supplies. "Send aid pods to the largest fires first," Hale instructed. "Prioritize civilians and essential infrastructure. We have to stabilize the planet before the Vorath return." His executive officer, Commander Lyra Chen, nodded. "Yes, sir. Ground teams are ready to deploy." Hale sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "These people are resilient," he said quietly. "They have endured more than most in the galaxy ever will. That is why we fight, not just for them, but for every world that believes it is forgotten." Meanwhile, in Caravel, Raylan and her council prepared to meet the human delegation. The humans would come down to Taraxis soon, not as conquerors, but as allies. The council was nervous. They had never met another species face to face, much less one that had just saved them from extinction. When the human shuttle touched down in the central plaza, a hush fell over the crowd. The ramp lowered, and the first humans stepped onto the scorched ground of Taraxis. Their uniforms were marked with the insignia of the United Human Fleet, and their faces were calm, confident, and determined. Admiral Hale led them. His eyes swept over the gathering crowd, finally settling on Raylan Voss. He stepped forward. "Counselor Voss," he said, voice strong but kind. "I am Marcus Hale. We received your call for help. We are here to ensure your survival." Raylan curtsied slightly, unsure what was proper in this new encounter. "Admiral Hale, we cannot thank you enough. You saved our people, our homes, our lives." Hale shook his head. "We did not save you alone. You are still standing. You fought. You survived. That is just as important. We are allies, not saviors. Together we protect Taraxis." The humans moved quickly to establish temporary shelters for those displaced by the Vorath's first wave. Their ground teams were efficient and methodical. They worked alongside the Taraxians, building barriers, extinguishing fires, and providing food and medical aid. Raylan watched a young human engineer instructing Taraxian volunteers on how to reinforce the city's outer walls. The humans worked tirelessly, but they also encouraged the locals to fight for their own planet, teaching them that courage and skill were just as important as firepower. "You see," Hale said quietly to Raylan, "our goal is not to replace you. It is to stand beside you, to show what can happen when humans and others fight together, when we trust each other." Raylan nodded, feeling a warmth she had not known in months. "You have given our people more than safety. You have given them hope." As the days passed, the bond between humans and Taraxians grew stronger. Soldiers from both sides trained together, sharing tactics and knowledge. Human engineers taught Taraxians how to modify their remaining weapons for maximum effect. Civilians shared meals, stories, and laughter, slowly pushing back the fear that had taken root during the initial attack. Even children learned from the humans. They watched human pilots perform flight simulations, mimicking the daring maneuvers they had seen in orbit. The courage and skill of the humans inspired every generation, young and old. However, peace was not permanent. Scouts reported that the Vorath had not vanished. They were regrouping on the edge of the system, gathering reinforcements, and preparing for a second assault. Their intelligence network had noticed the humans' involvement, and they would come back, stronger and more determined. In a meeting in Caravel, Raylan, Hale, and their combined command staff convened to plan for the inevitable. Maps of the planet and orbital space were spread across the table. "We cannot let them take the planet," Raylan said firmly. "If they return, Taraxis must stand united. Humans and Taraxians together." Hale nodded. "We will strengthen your defenses, upgrade your fleet, and train your people. We will not just react to the swarm. We will anticipate them, and we will strike first when they arrive." A Taraxian counselor leaned forward. "We are grateful for your help, but we have no experience in this kind of warfare. How can we fight a species that does not seem to tire, that moves like a storm?" Hale looked each of them in the eyes. "You have already survived what most species cannot. You have courage, resilience, and ingenuity. That is more than enough. The rest we will teach you. You will not fight alone." Meanwhile, on the streets, the humans continued to inspire. Small groups of volunteers joined the human engineers to construct mobile defense towers. Pilots trained with instructors, learning new techniques in dogfighting simulations. Civilians learned how to identify Vorath weaknesses, contributing to the broader defense strategy. In one training session, a young Taraxian boy, Talon, watched a human pilot demonstrate evasive maneuvers. His eyes shone with awe. "Do you think I could fly like that?" he asked the instructor. The human smiled. "With practice and courage, you could fly better than anyone here. Courage is the key, not size or strength." Talon ran off to try the simulator. In that moment, he did not feel small or powerless. He felt capable, ready to defend his world. Night fell over Taraxis, and the fires of the first wave still glowed in the distance. But in the city of Caravel, humans and Taraxians gathered in makeshift halls to share food, stories, and music. Differences faded as they celebrated their survival. Raylan sat beside Admiral Hale, watching the interaction. She marveled at how easily the humans connected with her people. Their presence had brought courage, hope, and a sense of unity she had thought impossible in the face of annihilation. "You have changed everything," she said softly. Hale shook his head. "No, you have changed everything. We are here because you sent a call for help. Because you refused to give up. The courage of Taraxis made this possible. We only helped amplify it." Raylan smiled, feeling a bond form between the two species. It was more than alliance. It was trust. Mutual respect forged in the fire of survival. Days passed, and the Vorath's return drew closer. The humans continued to teach, train, and prepare. Defense systems were strengthened. Scouts were sent to the outer edges of the system to detect any signs of the swarm's advance. In the early morning hours, Hale walked through the central plaza with Raylan. Smoke still drifted from the first attacks, and the smell of burning wood hung in the air. Citizens were cleaning streets, rebuilding homes, and helping each other. "Your people are remarkable," Hale said. "They have endured so much, and yet they still rise. That is why humans fight for allies like you. Not because of orders, not because of duty, but because you are worth protecting." Raylan nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride in her people. "We have learned that courage is not just in weapons or ships. It is in the will to survive and to help each other. Your arrival has shown us that." Hale smiled faintly. "And we have learned that even the smallest colony can inspire great acts of courage. That is what makes alliances strong. That is what makes hope last." As the sun rose over the battered but still standing cities, humans and Taraxians stood side by side. They watched the horizon, waiting for the next storm. The Vorath would return, but now Taraxis would not face them alone. The bond between the species was solidifying. Humans and Taraxians had shared fire, hope, and courage. They had proven that together, they could survive the impossible. And when the Vorath returned, they would find more than a planet to conquer. They would find a united people, strengthened by friendship, courage, and the unbreakable bond forged in fire. For Taraxis, the lesson was clear. Survival was not just about weapons or strategy. It was about standing together, trusting each other, and facing the darkness with unwavering courage. Humanity had shown them that. And in doing so, they had created something far stronger than any fleet, the bond of hope. The calm over Taraxis was a fragile thing. For days, the people rebuilt their cities, tended to the wounded, and trained alongside the humans. Fires from the first Vorath attack still burned in distant valleys, smoke curling into the sky, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Yet hope had returned to the hearts of the Taraxians. Above, in orbit, the human fleet remained vigilant. The UHS Thunderchild and its companions patrolled the system, scanning for the slightest sign of the returning swarm. Admiral Marcus Hale walked the bridge with careful eyes, knowing the Vorath would strike again. And soon. "They will come," Hale said quietly to Commander Lyra Chen, his executive officer. "We cannot forget that they are patient." "They will not make the same mistake twice," Chen nodded. "We've prepared as best we can. Taraxis is stronger than they realize now. And the people. They've learned courage too." Hale allowed a small, rare smile. "Yes, that is the most powerful weapon of all." On the surface, Ra-Len Voss walked through Caravel, surveying the defenses. Towers had been built, barricades reinforced, and new weapon placements installed atop hills and city rooftops. Civilians and volunteers moved purposefully, working in tandem with human engineers. Raylan stopped at a training ground, watching young Taraxian pilots practice flight simulations under the watchful eyes of human instructors. Even children who had been too scared to leave their homes now showed confidence and skill. Beside her, a counselor whispered, "We have never seen our people so united." Raylan nodded. "It is not only unity," she said. "It is courage, and it was given to us by the humans who came when no one else would." In orbit, the Vorath were moving. Scouts detected their approach hours before they entered Taraxis' system. Hundreds of ships, black and predatory, streamed from the darkness. Their intent was clear. They would crush the colony and destroy anyone who dared stand in their path. "Admiral, they are coming in full force," Chen reported, her hands flying across the console. "They've learned from the last attack. They are faster, larger, more coordinated." Hale's face hardened. "Then we will fight smarter. All ships prepare for battle formation Alpha Strike. Civilian zones are secured. Fire teams ready orbital defenses. We meet them here, or Taraxis falls." The people of Taraxis watched the sky darken once more. Smoke mingled with the clouds of approaching Vorath, turning the horizon into a living nightmare. Children clung to parents. Farmers looked to the skies with fear in their eyes, and soldiers readied their weapons. But unlike before, they did not cower. They had humans beside them now. They had hope. Raylan stepped to the podium in the central plaza, facing the gathered citizens. "Do not despair," she called out. "Today we fight not as Taraxians alone. Today we fight as allies, humans and Taraxians together. Stand strong for your homes, for your families, for your world." The crowd erupted into cheers. A wave of courage swept over the city. This time, fear would not rule. In orbit, the human fleet advanced like a spear of lightning. They did not hesitate. They knew the Vorath were ruthless, but they also knew the galaxy had underestimated humanity before, and they would do so again if not met with force. "Form the vanguard," Hale commanded. "Destroy their lead ships. Draw the rest into our trap." The fleet surged forward, engines blazing. Plasmas streaked across the void. Missiles launched, and Vorath ships exploded in showers of green and black fragments. Yet the Vorath were prepared. They unleashed wave after wave, closing on the humans with relentless speed. Each strike tested the fleet's discipline, but humans and Taraxian pilots had trained together. Their coordination was near perfect. On the surface, civilians watched the battle unfold through observation towers and holoscreens. Explosions in orbit lit the sky like fireworks. But these were not celebrations, they were reminders that survival was not guaranteed. Talon, the young boy who had once feared the Vorath, now monitored a sensor console beside a human engineer. "There," he shouted. "Incoming ship. Deflector shields active." The engineer smiled. "Good call, Talon. Keep watching. We rely on you." Even the children of Taraxis had become participants in the defense. The humans had taught them that courage was not just in weapons but in vigilance, intelligence, and teamwork. In the midst of the battle, the Vorath unleashed their largest vessel yet, a massive creature with thick armor and multiple energy cannons. Its roar filled the void, and its presence caused smaller swarm ships to hesitate. Hale's eyes narrowed. "Target that ship," he ordered. "All units focus fire. We take it down or the system is lost." The human fleet moved as one, coordinating attacks from every angle. Torpedoes streaked toward the Vorath vessel. Laser beams cut through its defenses and plasma cannons struck relentlessly. For the first time, the Vorath felt hesitation. Their massive ship faltered, staggered under the precision and courage of its attackers. On the surface, Taraxians cheered at the sight. They had never seen such bravery in the galaxy before. The humans had taught them how to fight, but now they saw that they could fight too. In Caravel, Raylan watched the holoscreen with tears in her eyes. The human fleet had become a storm of light in the darkness, striking Vorath after Vorath with precision and daring that no other species could match. One counselor asked quietly, "Can they really hold them off?" Raylan shook her head. "We do not need to hold them off forever. We need to show them that Taraxis will not fall, that we will fight. That courage alone can turn the tide. And that is what the humans are teaching us. Courage is stronger than fear." The battle raged for hours. Human and Taraxian forces worked together seamlessly. Orbital defenses fired in coordination with surface cannons. Ships darted through Vorath formations, slipping past swarms, targeting weak points, and vanishing before the enemies could respond. Even as some human ships were damaged, the fleet pressed forward. They moved with purpose, understanding that hesitation would cost Taraxis everything. Finally, the massive Vorath vessel fell. A tremendous explosion lit the skies, scattering debris across orbit. The swarm faltered and then broke. Smaller ships turned to flee, but the humans and Taraxians were ready. Pursuit squads struck swiftly, cutting off escape routes. The Vorath could not recover. The skies above Taraxis cleared slowly. Smoke lingered, but the endless tide of the Vorath had been broken. For the first time, the people on the planet saw victory, not just survival but triumph. In Caravel, citizens poured into the streets, cheering for their allies in orbit and on the ground. Children waved at the sky. Soldiers and civilians embraced. Even the counselors allowed themselves smiles of relief. Raylan Voss looked up at the heavens. She whispered, "You came like lightning. You fought like fire. You have given us more than safety. You have given us hope." On the Thunderchild, Admiral Hale surveyed the aftermath. The fleet had taken damage, but losses were minimal compared to the destruction they had prevented. The Vorath retreat was complete. He turned to Commander Chen. "Today Taraxis stands, but the galaxy will remember how courage and unity can change the impossible. Humans and Taraxians together, we have shown the meaning of strength." Chen nodded. "They will never forget us, and we will never forget them." Back on Taraxis, citizens and soldiers worked together to clear rubble, tend to the wounded, and rebuild what had been lost. They were exhausted, but they were alive. And more importantly, they were ready. The bond between humans and Taraxians had been forged in fire and strengthened in battle. They had faced annihilation and survived because they stood together. And the galaxy, watching from afar, would never underestimate humanity again. For Taraxis, and for the humans who had answered the call, the lesson was clear. Courage, unity, and hope were more powerful than any weapon. They had faced the darkness and they had prevailed. The storm had broken. The lightning had struck, and Taraxis had survived stronger than ever.